Shalom, Ka'ala Yahweh, Ba'Shem Kawashai, Ba'Shem Rakal Kodash. The honors my teachers, the apostles and elders of Great Millstone. Peace and mercy to the elect, who are the house of David reborn again in this generation. And shalom to the 130 Yasharallah, who today are known as the Negroes, Latinos, and Native Indians, who before losing their true heritage were known as, and still are, the true Hebrew Israelites of the Holy Bible. In today's lesson, we're going to talk about the great event of our time. And I'm not talking about the Great Reset. I'm talking about an event that's even greater than that. It's the reawakening of the Israelites, right? The mass awakening of the children of God, right? The time that was prophesied in the Bible, which we're going to get into, of when the Negroes, Latinos, Native Indians would remember who they were according to the Bible, and that a few of them, a remnant of them, would return to their original heritage and then be, as it's prophesied, to be saved out of the future coming destruction of World War III, or as it's known in the Bible, Armageddon. So let's go and get started to read about this. This is Ezekiel 11-17. Therefore say, thus saith Yahweh Ba'Shem Yahshai power, I will even gather you from the people and assemble you out of the countries where ye have been scattered, and I will give you the land of Israel. Right? So this right here is one of the prophecies that the Lord said that in the latter days, right? That in the latter days He would bring us back together as one people from where the places that He has scattered us, right? This also proves that the Israelites, the Negroes, Latinos, Native Indians, would be scattered around the whole world. And when you look at our people, we are mixed amongst all over the other nations, right? You're always going to see a Negro, Latino, Native Indian in other countries, more so Negroes and Latinos and stuff, just because we get around, right? We travel a lot, and we really have what you wouldn't consider a homeland, right? Mexico, or South America is the homeland right now for the Latino race. But for the most part, we're all over the other places because of just war and destruction that's been hitting the South America. Now, eventually, like the scripture says here, that the Lord would gather us, right? And not only would He gather us, but He's going to put us back in our original homeland of Israel, right? Because the people who are in that land of Israel today, the people who refer to themselves as the Ashkenazi or so-called Jews, they are not the biblical Israelites or the biblical Jews of the Bible. They are converts who converted to a newly made up religion based off of the heritage of the Israelites, and they referred to it as Judaism. Again, and they did this. Let's actually take a look at the Bible timeline. This took place around here it goes, around 740 AD, right? With the people that were in the land of Khazaria at that time, right? They were known as the Khazars. They were surrounded for the most part by, I guess you'd call them the Christians, right? Basically the Holy Roman Empire that was in the west, and then the Islamic Arabs in the or the Ottoman Empire in the south, right? And they were pretty much the only pagan nation in that area, there by the in the Caucasus Mountains, right, or in Khazaria. Well, what eventually ended up happening is that their king, known as Kagan Bull or Kagan Bulan, Kagan is just their way of saying king. So King Bulan basically decided to do a mass conversion of his people to a new religion that they would make made up, right? And this is also because, excuse me, they went back in their history and they seen that at one time that they had practiced the ways of the Israelites back in the time of the Maccabees, when a bunch of Edomites were converted to the Hebrew customs and laws, because I believe it was John Hyrcanus was tired of them raiding the Jerusalem, right? So he had converted a bunch of them. Now that eventually died off, but again, Kagan Bullen used that along with just the understanding of how the beliefs of the Israelites were far superior to Christianity or Islam, right? Because it was based off of a heritage, right? And they understood that would leave them out of the I guess you could say the power of these other two opposing forces. Well, they eventually took on this mantle in 740 AD, and they portrayed to be converts to this religion. Well, it's been like this ever since then, right? And eventually they got kicked out of their land there in the Caucasus Mountains, right? So some of them left. They left voluntarily, but basically the Rush, which are the modern day Russians at that time, destroyed them back like in the 900s. And you could look up this history if you look up how the Rush destroyed the Amalekites, right? This has happened in 970 AD, right? This is basically how the Khazarians got kicked out of their lands after converting. All right, so about 220 years after they converted, they were destroyed and basically forced out of their land, and that's how you have a lot of these, Jewish converts flee into Europe, and then that's when they kind of went into Spain and all that stuff, and they kind of infiltrated that whole area. Well, I said all that to say this: they eventually got into the land in 1948, right? Through schemes and corruption, they were able to weasel their way in to the land of Israel. And after the 1800s, they no longer said that they were the converts into Judaism, but that they were the actual Israelites. They were the actual Jews. That's what they actually started saying after the 1800s, right? And but the Lord has now raised us up. And when I say us, I'm referring to the Negroes, Latinos, and Native Indians, right? Because when you get into history and also prophecy, which confirms all this, you see that these people are the true Hebrew Israelites of today, right? This also aligns with that old idiom of the Bible that says the meek shall inherit the earth, right? When you look at the so-called Jew today, there's nothing meek about them. They own all the banks, the huge corporations, the banks, the governments around the world. They own the world, right? They are the top tribe of the nation of Edom, which also was predicted to be in rulership of the entire world through their power of their weaponry before the second coming of the Messiah. Okay, well, back to us, right? When you get into history, you can see that through Jacob, right, and his 4 wives, that each one of these wives had children, right? And when you get into the prophecies and who everybody is, you could line up. For example, the so-called Mexicans go back to the son Issachar. The so-called Negro goes back to Judah. The so-called North American Indian goes back to the son of Gad, and so forth, man. All these. You could go ahead and pause the video if you want to see which mother each tribe family comes from. But this is how it breaks down today, man. And this here is another very trying scripture that explains how the so-called Latino and the so-called Native American Indian got over here to the South America. Now this happened when you get in, again, get into the Bible timeline, this took place after the Assyrian captivity. You see, in 1722 BC to 605 BC, we basically, the Northern Kingdom, which would be the Latino Native Indians, we basically were kicked out of the land of Israel, man, because we had gone off and we were worshiping other gods. Now, the Lord eventually decided to kick us out, and that's where, when you read about the book of Judith and all that stuff, you also read about Tobit, where he was in an exiled state, all that stuff. You also, well, eventually we were there for over 100 years, and we eventually, after the Assyrians came and the Babylonians came and destroyed the Babylonians, or Salaki. After the Babylonians came and destroyed the Assyrians, what happened is, about that time is when you had the Israelites, right, the 10 tribes, decide to leave Assyria and go into a new land, a land which had never been inhabited before by human beings, so that way we could live out the commandments what the Lord had set upon us, man. And this took place around 724 to 612 BC, right? Now, this is also confirmed in 2nd Ezra 13 and 40. It says, "Those are the 10 tribes which were carried away prisoners out of their own land in the time of Hoshea the king, whom Salmaneser, the king of Assyria, led away captive. And he carried them over the waters, and so came they into another land." Right? And this is talking about the rivers of the Euphrates and all those places, to eventually lead us into the land of Assyria, where we would eventually, at that point, separated, sent into other lands, had our names changed, our families, ripped apart, right? Basically, we were under captivity, right? We were slaves in that land. Now, here's the part I want to read at. This is the other point. It says, "But they took this counsel amongst themselves, that they would leave the multitude of the heathen and go forth into a further country where never mankind dwelt, that they might there keep their statutes, which they never kept in their own land." Now, let's go down to 43, because this is the other part I want to get into. "And they entered into the Euphrates by the narrow passages of the river, and the Most High then showed signs for them, and held still the flood till they were passed over." Right? And this is talking about how in ships we sailed down the Euphrates and around the Horn of Africa and crossed over the Atlantic Ocean, right out there where that part where all the hurricanes come out of, known as Hurricane Alley, and we eventually hit the Southern America, land, right? And then it says here, "For through that country there was a great way to go, namely a year and a half." Right? And we understand that this right here is a hint, because it tells you in Kings that King Solomon would have the Hamite Navy come over here to the Americas to pick up, resources, gold, peacocks, all these bunch of things, and bring them back. And it would take them 3 years, a year and a half there, a year and a half back, right? So for us, since we were going to a one-way trip to South America, it took us simply half that time, a year and a half. And the same region is called Azareth, which basically just means an unknown land. And here it is. "Then dwelt they there until the latter time," which is talking about right now, because we are in the latter time, "and now when they shall begin to come." Right? And what does that mean? Right? What does this mean, when they begin to come? This is talking about the Southern Kingdom, okay? The tribe of Judah, the tribe of Benjamin, and the tribe of Levi, right? These would be, they would later on come to the Americas in what is known today as the North Atlantic slave trade, right? So this right here is a prophecy that shows that not only did the northern kingdom get sent over here by ships, but also that the southern kingdom would also be sent over here, right? Now, along with that, right, there's also prophecies that tells you that in the land of our captivities, after the Lord had punished us, right, and scattered us into the four corners of the earth, and as it tells you in Jeremiah 17:4, that he would make us forget who we were and that we would forget our heritage. This right here tells you that we would regain our heritage in the land of our captivity. Let's read it. It's Baruch 2:30. For I knew that they would not hear me because it is a stiff-necked people, right? And that's talking about Israel, right? The Negro Latinos, Native Indians, right? We are some fucking hard-headed people, man, right? Try to explain this truth to somebody who's not interested, man. You ain't gonna get to them, man, right? Try to teach our people anything that's in a book, man, unless it's in a song, a movie, right, or a small documentary, or it's visualized. They ain't gonna pay attention to it, man, because they are stiff-necked people. Continuing, but in the land of their captivities they shall remember themselves, right? And that's actually happening right now, man. That's happening all over the world. Okay, we in the lands of our captivities, right? Even though we might be there from what we feel is our own free will, right? We were born in these countries, right? You know, we have jobs, we may have fancy cars and nice houses, but these are still the lands of our captivities, right? Because these are not our lands. These are the lands of our captors, right? Namely here in America. This land belongs to the Caucasian race, the Edomites, okay? We are their prisoners of wars. We're their POWs, people, right? And now, you know, ask the NFL players, man. You know, they just hired Vocab Malone, the chaplains did, to try to show them how to dissuade the players from looking into become, you know, what the whole Hebrew Israelite movement is, right? Well, that ain't gonna work because it's prophecy here, man, right? Our people will start to remember themselves in the land of their captivity, man. See, this is how that's working, right? And now that blindfold of being black, Mexican, Salvadorian, Haitian, Jamaican, Indian, all that shit's starting to fall off, man. And now we're starting to understand who we were, right? Because the Lord has opened up the spigot of knowledge and information, right? Using the power of the unicorn, which is also referred to as the internet today, right? And for a small few, we have used this, you know, this vast power at our fingertips to not fuck around and look at cat videos or twerking videos. Yeah, we may look at some of that shit, but what we do, namely us here, the Hebrew Israelites, right, starting with Apostle Tahar on down, we use this information, this technology for good. We look into our history, we look into research, we find books that have been hidden, right? What do we do with that? We share what we have learned, right? We teach what we have learned and not hide, you know, like the Bible says, right? Who lights a candle and hideth it, right? We aren't hiding the candle that we've been given, man, right? Because and with those who have either woken up or are watching these videos and are starting to wake up, this image here portrays that perfectly, man. It shows how, you know, some people out of the group out there are going to wake up and they're going to realize what's going to happen in the world and who they are, you know, and now that they have the understanding where they come from, now they're going to understand where they're going, right? So with all that, I want to just read this. This is Romans 13 and 11. And that, knowing the time, that now it is high time to awake out of sleep. For now is our salvation nearer than when we believed. Because right now, people, this truth has been preached throughout the entire world, okay? And one of the prophecies that the Messiah said would have to happen before his second coming is that this truth would have to be preached all over the world, and that has clearly been done, okay? This truth has gone out and it's been waking up people, and it's coming out of Esau's nose, man. You know, you have rappers talking about that they're the original Israelites of the Bible. You know, when they go on to radio shows, you have NFL players talking about this, to where the NFL chaplains are starting to worry about it, trying to find ways to combat it. You have the U.S. government trying to demonize this movement because they understand who we really are, right? But they don't want us to wake up. So what they're doing is they're trying to demonize this truth, right? So, but that's actually happening, people, right? World War III is on the verge of breaking out. You have Iran off there showing off their missiles. You have North Korea standing up and boasting at America, talking about if they want to sleep for the next 4 years, they better not help South Korea with any military efforts, right? You know, World War III is about to break off. You got Russia talking about America's committing cyber crimes against them, and that they're not going to stand for it anymore. You know, so, you know, and then you have these devils trying to bring forth the mark of the beast, RFID chip implant, right? And they're doing it by making everybody believe that there's this huge worldwide crisis which requires you to take an experimental shot, right? Which is eventually going to lead to a way for you to seamlessly verify that you have this shot, right? That being that mark of the beast that they're going to eventually bring out after they've gone through all the steps of their orchestrated pandemic, right? So again, this is the time, people. This is not just something that's going on, right? This is going to happen in our lifetime, people, right? That whole, well, it ain't going to happen in our lifetime, you know, old saying, that shit doesn't hold water anymore, people. This is it. You have been chosen to live through what we are going through, okay? You were brought back on earth to live through the end of the world, through Armageddon, okay? And it's your turn to stand up. It's your time to get right with the Lord, so that way you can be saved out of what is coming. So with all that, I want to give all praises to Yahweh, B'Hashem, Yahushai, B'Hashem, Ruach HaKodesh. Double honors my teachers, the apostles and elders of Great Millstone. Peace and mercy to the elect. Shalom.